As you begin this clay project, you will need to have your table all set up to work with clay, and that involves covering your row of tables with a tablecloth with the white side facing up, and also to have a toolbox handy with all your clay tools that you'll need inside. It's really important that throughout the process of working on your clay project that it always stays on the tablecloth and that you never are working directly on the table, because the clay has a tendency to suction cup itself to the table material, and then when you try to remove your project from the table, you end up having to destroy it to get it off. So, word to the wise, throughout this clay project, keep the clay on the tablecloth. Once you've got your workspace all set up, you are going to need to begin with a slab of clay. A slab is a very important ceramic building method and a term that simply means a flat pancake of clay. You'd be astounded at how many different things that you can make out of just a slab or a flat pancake of clay. And what we're going to do with this slab is we are going to use it to create the base of our bobblehead structure. So either roll yourself out a slab or receive a pre-flattened slab from your teacher, and you are going to measure out a rectangle that is 7 inches wide and 4 inches tall. You can use a ruler to measure out those dimensions, and when you're ready, use a needle tool in your clay box to press firmly and cut out the 4 by 7 inch rectangle. Make sure to hang on to the extra clay that borders your 4 by 7 rectangle. Spray it with some water. That's a general rule to keep the clay wet and workable. And roll that extra clay into a ball. We will be using that clay later, so keep your eye on it. Then, once you've got your 4 by 7 rectangle cut out, you're going to roll it up into a cylinder. And the two ends of the rectangle that overlap need to be scratched and scored in order to connect the two pieces. Clay likes to shrink and fall apart as it begins its drying process. And so to prevent that from happening, we always need to make sure that every piece of clay that we want to stick to another piece of clay is scratched and scored. And in this classroom, it's very convenient to use a toothbrush. Spray an old gross clay toothbrush, never been used for teeth, just on clay. But spray it with water and scratch the two pieces of clay to create slip, which is a mixture of clay and water, and also to create millions of little scratch marks that act as suction cups to keep that clay together. Once you have a cylinder, it's time to use another very common and basic clay building skill, which is pinching. And pinching is basically using your hands to form the clay into the shape that you're going for. So we are going to use the pinching method to close up the top of the cylinder and then form it into a cone-like end. You can also use pinching to smooth out the seam where the two ends of your rectangle came together. And what we're trying to go for here is a cone-like shape, or even like a bottleneck shape that is thicker on the bottom and comes up at the top to a point. And you want the point of your cone or your bottle shape that you're going for here to be about 1/2 inch tall and be as pointy as an uncapped marker tip. This is going to be the spindle upon which your bobblehead's head is going to balance and bobble. You may notice here that I'm using a wipe for extra smoothness. The wipes in your toolbox are the perfect texture and the perfect moisture to really smooth out your clay without leaving any fingerprints behind. And once you're ready and you have the base of your bobblehead, and you notice that the tip of it is about 1/2 inch tall and is the same pointiness as an uncapped marker, you're ready to move on and create the next basic structure of your bobblehead, which is to create the head. To start, you're going to go back to that extra clay that you cut off at the beginning of this project, and you're most likely going to have to tear away some of that clay to make it the size of a golf ball. Once you've torn off the right amount of clay, or once you have a golf ball sized piece of clay, it's time to roll it into a nice sphere, using the table, using the muscles in our hands to get the job done, and then creating a pinch pot. To do that, you are going to cup the sphere that you've created, the golf ball sized sphere, in your non-dominant palm, and then you're going to press firmly into the sphere with your dominant thumb. At this point, you actually already immediately have a pinch pot, but it's our job to widen it, make that hole in the center of the sphere bigger, and to even out the walls of your little pinch pot. So you are going to use something that I call a quacking motion. It's like a quack with your hands. If your hand became a duck and it was quacking, that motion is what you need to apply pressure around the sides of the pinch pot to A, even them out, and B, make your pinch pot the desired size and the desired shape. At this point, you should probably be thinking about what your bobblehead is going to turn into. Right now, we're just working on the base form, and we're going to add a lot more to these two pieces, the cone and then the pinch pot that balances on top. And so, as you're forming the head with a pinch pot, consider what shape you want to have the head be. I already know at this point that I'm going to create a cat bobblehead, and so I'm going to keep the cat's facial shape in mind as I'm pinching out this pinch pot. You'll also want to double check now and then that your pinch pot will fit and balance on top of your spindle structure that we made at the beginning of this project. At this point, we've got our base structure done, and now it's time to personalize and make our vision a reality with this bobblehead. So it's time to individualize your formations to create whatever you're going for. A human being, an animal of sorts, a creature, a monster, a mystical being, whatever idea you come up with, it's now time to make it happen. That means you're going to definitely have to make changes to this base structure. And you can do that one or both of two ways. You can use the additive method, which is adding more clay to the structure, like arms and legs, etc. Or two, you can use the subtractive method, which is taking away clay from the structure. For example, cutting off a little bit of the base to make it shorter to fit your needs. A very useful ceramics tip is an easy way to find out if you have two identical matching sizes of pieces of clay. And to do that, you'll pick up the two pieces that you're comparing in your hands and then close your eyes. And your focus and attention will not be visual anymore because your eyes are closed. Your focus will go to the weight and size of the clay in your hands, and you'll immediately be able to tell which one is the bigger piece. Then you're simply going to transfer by tearing off little pieces of the larger piece of clay to even out the two pieces. Another important building technique to know as you're personalizing your bobblehead is to use coils. Coils are long noodles of clay that you make by rolling the clay back and forth in your hands like this, or pressing it down onto the table to roll out the coil. You can use coils to add arms and legs, tentacles, tails, hair, and even facial features. So I am trying to create a cat bobblehead. The cat will be sitting down, and I need the cat's two front legs and paws to be attached to the front of the body. So I created two matching pieces of clay. I rolled them into coils, and now I'm forming them into little cat legs and paws. And when they're ready to be attached, I am going to make sure that I scratch and score it. Remember, clay doesn't like to stick to itself throughout the drying process, so even if it seems like the clay is sticking just fine without scratching and scoring, it'll fall off when the clay dries, guaranteed. So, Make sure that you wet a toothbrush, scratch both surfaces that you're attaching, and press firmly to make sure that those attachments stay. So I'm going to do a little bit of sculpting as well once these coils are scratched and scored and attached, because I don't want them to look like they were just stuck on the cat's body. I want them to look like part of the cat's body. Another adjustment that I'm going to do to the base form is to slightly change the shape to look like the curved spine of a sitting cat. So I kind of wanted to curve it out at the bottom and make the backbone. Just make it more cat-like is what I'm trying to say. So here I go. I'm using all additive method at this point. I am building different sections of the cat's body using coils and slabs. I'm making sure to scratch and score each piece that is attached and added to the sculpture. And I'm also sculpting as I go. So each piece that I attach, I'm choosing to sculpt and smear and smooth into the base structure so that the ears look like they're part of the head, the hips look like they're connected to the body, etc. At some point, I do move on from adding clay to subtracting some clay, even if it's just a little bit of clay that you're taking away. For example, using the tools in your toolbox to add a texture by kind of drawing on the clay. Really, you're carving and engraving into the clay and using the subtractive method. After much adding, subtracting, scratching, and scoring and sculpting, I am done with my bobblehead cat sculpture, and I'm pumped about it. I'm really excited to see what creations you make.